Hey guys, it's Destiny, and in today's video, I wanted to talk about Silverwolf and her pros and cons, and just general things to consider about this character. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. So to give a brief sum up of what Silverwolf does, Silverwolf is a quantum type character following the path of the Nihility, which is a debuffer class. She has a special ability to inflict weaknesses on enemies, and when Silverwolf uses her skill, there is a chance to inflict a weakness onto an enemy target. The weakness type will be the same as one of the allies in combat. Her ultimate can reduce the defense of a single enemy target and deal damage to them, and whenever she attacks, Silverwolf has a chance of implanting a random bug on an enemy, which can reduce their attack, defense, or speed. To give a quick example of what this weakness type effectiveness is, it's essentially, let's say you have a team of fire characters, for example. When you use Silverwolf's skill, she has a chance of inflicting a type weakness onto the enemy, which means if the enemy is not weak to fire, now they will be weak to fire, assuming your team is fire characters. Of course, if you have different elemental characters, then there will be a chance of it being one of those characters, and it will be at random at that point. Now, regarding the pros and cons of Silverwolf, of course, I've gone over her skill kit more in depth in other videos, just for comparisons and whether or not you should consider her or Locha for 1.1, but I wanted to get into her pros and cons for this video. So, for her pros and cons, there is a major con, if you will, that I've seen a few people discuss, which is we have a lack of characters that can be able to use Silverwolf's skill kit very effectively. So what I personally think about this is that I believe we can either do mono or non-mono comps can honestly work with Silverwolf. But let's just say we're looking at Quantum specifically. We're gonna have to wait a while before Mono Quantum is really prevalent in the game due to the fact that we currently don't have a Quantum Healer or Shielder. So as a result, Mono Quantum isn't so prevalent or will not be very prevalent once Silverwolf is here. I do think Mono Quantum can exist though once we get Fu Xuan, who will be a preservation quantum character, so I think that'll be really good to pair with Silverwolf, because then you could do Zila, Silverwolf, and Fu Xuan, and whoever you want for the final character. If you want to do Xing Shui, you can. I'm not saying you can or can't, it's really up to you. Mono Quantum will eventually be a thing, it just currently isn't really, in my opinion, I don't think it's going to be that great, but it is definitely something to consider in the future. Additionally, if you are enjoying this video so far, make sure to subscribe, and now let's carry on. I believe Mono Lightning though is a possibility currently, since we do have Jingyuan, Tingyun, and Bailu. Mono Ice can possibly work because we have Japard, Yanqing, Pele, and so on. So there are possible options right now, but since majority of players don't have every character, mono comps become a little tricky to manage as a result, since not having the characters would not enable you to look into monocomp as much. The reason you'd want a monocomp to begin with or to use is if Silverwolf is able to inflict the type weakness without much trouble, then your teammates all benefit and can weakness break the enemy no matter who the enemy is, assuming they are not very resistant to Silverwolf. This makes it, let's say you're just fighting Japard and he's not resistant to Silverwolf in this hypothetical scenario, and you have a full Quantum team. Japard typically isn't weak to Quantum, and so far we've only really seen him be weak to Physical, Lightning, and I believe Imaginary. So if you're able to inflict the Quantum weakness on him, now your whole team benefits and can deal with him far easier than not having any teammates that can break Japard's toughness meter in a timely fashion. In my opinion, that allows Silverwolf to be amazing for that purpose of hacking the game, if you will. I mean, she's quite literally a hacker, so I just see it as her hacking the game and implementing cheat codes, which are her bugs and weakness type effectiveness on the enemies, to help you win regardless. Personally, I'd love to use Mono Quantum on Japard in my example, since one, I love Zila and want to use Zila forever, since she's one of my favorites, and I'm sure some who have pulled Zila also love her. And two, it will allow me to be a little more flexible with how I create team comps depending on the scenario. If we use Memory of Chaos as an example, Silverwolf can be amazing for that, since now you can ignore the enemy's weaknesses a bit more and use what you want more so for one of the sides, and the other side can heavily focus on what the enemy is naturally weak to. One thing I'd like to mention real quick though regarding mono comps, or the idea is, if you rather run a traditional multiple element team and just have Silverwolf inflict the ally type that you are missing onto the enemy, that's perfectly fine. So I think it'll work nicely both ways, mono or non-mono. Ultimately, I do believe investment-wise she'll be very good, and I don't look at the L word. Some of you know what that is, some of you may not know what that is, but I'm sure most of you know what that is, regarding her kit until she's here. I'll be able to make my final thoughts on if she's truly worth it, but her concept seems very good in my opinion, especially in an RPG standpoint. Being able to do that can be incredibly useful for dealing with enemies and having an easier time. She likely won't be replaceable either due to the fact that they would have to make another character who's able to inflict weakness types onto enemies, and that new character would either have to be more accessible than she is, so let's say it's maybe a 4-star, a free 4-star, or they can do it better than she can. So let's say we get another 5-star who could do what she does. They would have to do it better than her in order to just completely replace her, if you will. If they don't make a character like that after her, then in a sense she may be future-proof on one condition. This condition being how effective is she actually when it comes to applying her bugs and weaknesses. And by this I mean, do enemies have extreme weaknesses to it or are completely resistant to it? And if there are resistances, by how much are the resistances? Either way, you'd want to build effect hit rate on Silverwolf to ensure she hits her weakness debuff on majority of enemies, but it's dependent on how much effect hit rate you would need, and once again, how resistant are the enemies. Assuming you build Silverwolf a certain way and most enemies do not actually completely resist her effects, then I believe she's definitely worth it and even possibly future-proof, as I've mentioned. If enemies though are highly resistant to her, which personally I don't think they would create a lot of bosses or enemies that would completely resist what she could do, then she will have difficulties keeping up and as a result may not really be worth it. Overall though, Silverwolf will definitely be more prevalent, at least in my eyes, once we get more characters, since it allows for more variety and effectiveness in using her skill kit. But I'm not sure if I'd recommend waiting on a rerun if you are considering her. I've seen a few say she'll be better for a rerun due to getting more characters, and while that may or may not be completely inaccurate, depending on when that is, the only issue is we're likely nowhere near rerun, at least for right now, considering how the game has only been out for basically just a little bit over a month. If you rather get Silverwolf later and don't really care for her now, then you can wait. I would just be very cautious of knowing that we actually don't know when we're going to get her again past this 1.1 banner. So while I can agree with a bit with that advice, I also personally don't advise it for waiting for a rerun since, as mentioned, we aren't sure when reruns will even occur. Of course though, if you love her character, I'd recommend pulling regardless. I love her design, so I'll be getting her regardless. And for those who aren't sure, I would recommend waiting a few days and just seeing how good she is, how effective her skill kit is against enemies, and then making your decision from there if you believe she's worth it or not. As for Locha, I've made videos discussing the two in comparison for a few videos, and a few days ago, I did release a video like this one about him, and if you'd like to know my thoughts about Locha, make sure to check out that video. Let me know though what you guys think about Silverwolf though. Do you feel like she'll be as good as some may feel she is, or do you think she won't be that great and are planning to skip her? I'd love to know your thoughts, like always. Personally, I feel like she's going to be really good. I have really high hopes for this character, and I cannot wait to pull her. Lastly, if you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe and leave a like to help support the channel. I hope all of you, of course, have a nice one. Peace.